I'm Matt McClure, and this is Currents. Young Catholics hit the streets to spread the word about the reason for the season.
You can't expect to see much, you just try to get out there, give a hand, reach out to them, and their immediate reaction, it's mostly, indifference, I would say, especially indifference. But you can't let that get you down.
Plus, you've heard a lot about the Occupy Wall Street movement, but what about Occupy Advent? I'll talk to one pastor who's making that his message this year. And the very beginning is a very good place to start for these parishioners. It's a Christmas play that begins in the Garden of Eden.
I hope there's a renewed sense of the gift that we have been given through the birth of Christ. And I think that's the message that we need to remember and to bring to the world.
Well, good evening. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. It will be a bright Christmas for retailers if the holiday shopping numbers so far are any indication. The National Retail Federation says shoppers spent more than $52 million during the four-day Thanksgiving weekend. And yes, that is a record. And the nonprofit Nonpartisan Conference Board, which provides leading economic indicators, reports that consumer confidence is higher now, and that's likely given to a boost by a drop in unemployment. So things are looking a little rosy for the holidays, but this past Friday, shoppers were not the only ones hitting the sidewalks in trendy Soho. Oh no. Old St. Patrick's Cathedral on Mulberry Street held a parish mission where young people took to the streets to remind the people walking by that despite the shopping deals to be had, there really is only one reason for the season.
The way it works is each team has four, so you guys will be in an intersection. And so, and make sure you're in the right corner there, okay? It matters which corner. We're running a mission here called Christmas with Christ. And the purpose of the mission is to seek out Catholics or fallen away Catholics that, want to come back to the church and just looking for someone to invite them back. Okay, go find some souls.
We've got a number of what we call missionaries. These are lay people and brothers from the Legionaries of Christ on the streets here, handing out brochures, alerting them that there is a church here. We've got the church open and ready. We've got priests in the confessional as we speak.
The idea is to sort of grab people in the midst of their busy time here. We're entering the second weekend of Advent. Advent is supposed to be a time to prepare for Christmas. The danger is that we sometimes get so caught up in all the things, layered around Christmas that we forget at the heart of it is Christ. And that's really what we're trying to do with this mission, is remind people that Christ is at the center of the thing and is an important, in fact, critical element of Christmas.
Many times people don't have time. That's one thing I've realized here in the city. So they tell us, well, stay in your corner, try to meet people, but you really have to walk with them.
All right.
Okay.
God bless you.
Yeah, well, if he's here.
He came up to me and he asked me what I was doing, if I was a priest. He never had an opportunity to choose what his faith would be. So he's been away from the church for a very, very long time.
It's the classic, it's indifference. You can't expect to see much, you just try to get out there, give a hand, reach out to them, but their immediate reaction, it's mostly, indifference, I would say, especially indifference. But you can't let that get you down.
If we found one soul that had fallen away from the church and came back, that would make it a success.
One of the brothers approached me on the street. It was literally a 10-second conversation. He just asked me, and I say, I need to give something back to God as he's given me so much. So I just say, why not? Come inside for a minute.
What's amazing is the stories of people who sort of accidentally came across our way and ended up coming back to the Lord, going to confession, and coming back with the biggest smile on their face you'd ever want to see. And that is a soul that's saved, or at least on the path to salvation. So if we could save one soul, it's worth it.
Well, there's more currents ahead. Miami's Archbishop has some strong words for the Obama administration. We'll tell you what he had to say, and we'll have that and the rest of the day's headlines next. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Matt McClure. Coming up later, it's a unique presentation of the Christmas story. First, though, let's have a look at the day's headlines. Miami Archbishop Thomas Wensky says the Obama administration is running roughshod over conscience protections. In an op-ed column for the Miami Herald, Archbishop Wensky says President Obama is not keeping the promises he made in his speech at Notre Dame's commencement in 2009. Then the president promised to, quote, honor the conscience of those who disagree with abortion, end quote. Wensky says, though, the administration has reversed regulations on conscience laws, failed to include conscience rights in last year's health care bill, and required most private health plans to cover contraception without a copay. Well, meanwhile, Republican presidential candidate Newt Gingrich is clarifying his position on when life begins. Questions arose when Gingrich said during an interview with ABC that life begins when a fertilized egg is implanted. When he was asked to clarify that, Gingrich repeated his position, but he added that he has never been for embryonic stem cell research per se. Gingrich, who is Catholic, later sent out a statement saying he believes life begins at conception and that every unborn life is precious. Well, a judge in Oregon has denied a request to question Vatican officials face-to-face in a sex abuse lawsuit here in the U.S. The judge ruled that lawyers for the plaintiff, a 63-year-old man, did not prove that there was a need there to speak with Vatican officials in person. The plaintiff is trying to sue the Vatican rather than just the Archdiocese of Portland over allegations that a priest abused him in the 1960s. The priest died in 1992. Attorneys for the Holy See have called on the judge to dismiss the case, saying the Vatican did not have direct control over the priest. Well, turning now to Iraq, Asian News is reporting that a group of protesters linked to Islamic extremists attacked several Christian-owned shops, also a hotel and a beauty parlor in one town. The report says the violence broke out at a town about 300 miles outside of Baghdad after a sermon by the local imam. At least 30 people, including 20 policemen, were injured. Well, meanwhile, a Vatican archbishop says Christians and Muslims in Syria need to learn to get along. Archbishop Silvano Tomasi, the Holy See's permanent representative to the United Nations in Geneva, says the diverse groups need to find a way to live together without violence. On Saturday, at least 15 people were killed during fighting between security forces and army rebels in northern Syria. Well, change may be coming in Egypt, but not necessarily the kind the residents there were hoping for. A missionary priest who works in Cairo tells the Vatican news agency Fidesz that people will become disenchanted with Islamic rule. Now, the priest made those comments after the first round of elections in Egypt's lower chamber last week. The Muslim Brotherhood garnered 40% of the vote. That was the most of any party. Well, meanwhile, the city of Hanoi in Vietnam was the scene of violence against Catholics on Friday as a group of policemen and soldiers attacked hundreds of priests and parishioners. The Catholics had handed in a petition asking for the suspension of a building project on the church's property. The Catholics were attacked on their way home. Dozens of people were arrested. At least one priest is in critical condition. The president of Caritas International says a failure to adequately address climate change is a moral apartheid. Speaking at a mass in Durban, South Africa, Cardinal Oscar Rodriguez Maradiaga says that just like apartheid separated people along racial lines, the world's environment and energy policies are separating man from nature. The cardinal is in Durban for 2 weeks of UN climate change talks. Well, Spain's highest court says the Catholic group Opus Dei must remove the personal details of a former member from its records. The court upheld a previous ruling that Opus Dei must remove a woman's name, the day she joined the group, and the day she left from its database. Opus Dei argued that it could keep the information based on a long-standing agreement with the Vatican, but the court said the former member's right to privacy superseded that agreement. From England, the Catholic Archbishop of Westminster, now responding to criticism of his recent statements on same-sex civil unions. Last week, the UK Catholic journal The Tablet reported Archbishop Vincent Nichols said same-sex unions provide a structure where people can, quote, find their place and protection and legal provision. Now, speaking with Catholic News Agency, Nichols says that same-sex unions do not, in law, contain a required element of sexual relationships and are therefore not the same as marriage. He says that while the bishops of England and Wales respect the existence of same-sex partnerships in law, they are not the same as same-sex marriage, which the bishops oppose. Well, meanwhile, Pope Benedict talked preparation during his Sunday Angelus prayer. Rome Reports has those details.
Sunday's Angelus prayer was celebrated on the second Sunday of Advent. As Christmas approaches, the Pope said a deep self-reflection and inner change is needed to genuinely welcome the true meaning of the holidays.
Mentre ci prepariamo al Natale, è importante che rientriamo in noi stessi e facciamo una verifica sincera sulla nostra vita. Lasciamoci illuminare da un raggio della luce che proviene da Betlemme, la luce di colui che è il più grande. E si è fatto piccolo, il più forte, e si è fatto debole.
The Pope also highlighted the role of the Virgin Mary and St. John the Baptist as they prepare for the coming of God.
Lo stile di Giovanni Battista dovrebbe richiamare tutti i cristiani a scegliere la sobrietà come stile di vita, specialmente in preparazione alla festa del Natale, in cui il Signore, come direbbe San Paolo, da ricco che era, si è fatto povero per voi, perché voi diventaste ricchi per mezzo della sua povertà.
The Pope went on to say that John the Baptist invites all people to a new way of acting and thinking, both of which are connected to the coming of the Lord.
It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas at the Vatican. Workers lifted the Holy See's Christmas tree into place today. The 98-foot tall tree, which weighs almost 5 tons, is a gift to Pope Benedict from a community in the Ukraine. I was about to sing It's Beginning to Look a Lot Like Christmas, but then I think we'd probably have to pay somebody something, and I just don't want to do that. Well, and the Senate is taking an opportunity this Christmas to promote some bipartisan spirit. 58 senators have signed up for a secret Santa gift exchange. That's the first of its kind for the upper chamber. The aim was to have Republicans and Democrats draw names from the opposite party. But as it turns out, fewer Republicans signed on, so some Democrats will have to buy gifts for members of their own party. There's a $10 maximum. Senator Al Franken came up with the idea, saying it may create unlikely friendships. Stay with us. There's more currents ahead. Coming up, the Occupy movement has spread from New York to cities across the country and around the world. Now it's taking over Advent? We'll explain. Welcome back. Well, it may have started on the streets of New York on September 17th, but the actual roots of the Occupy Wall Street movement go much deeper than that. The movement that resulted in people across the world camping out and raising their voices in protest actually got its start in the online world via social media. Well, now a pastor in Texas is hoping a new initiative that he's undertaken can harness the same power for a much different reason. Reverend David Hansen in Brenham, Texas has started the Occupy Advent movement to allow people to talk about the meaning of this season, which we are now in. And Reverend Hansen joins me now by phone to talk some more about it. Reverend Hansen, thanks so much for taking some time out for us.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Great to be with you, Matt.
Well, I love the fact that you do. You know, the moment our producer sent me an email, and I think the title of it was just #OccupyAdvent. I was like, yes. I'm in. I love this. Yeah. Social media has really changed the way that we not only communicate, but the way that we go about our lives in general. Take us back to the roots of Occupy Advent and tell us a little bit about how it actually got started online.
Absolutely. This grew out of actually a conversation precisely about that, about using social media for ministry and for the church that takes place every week on Tuesday nights. And we were having that conversation in particular about Advent and talking about how we can use social media during the time of Advent to get people to think about it. As I thought about that, was very impressed with the fact that Occupy movement really realizes the power of social media to spread an idea and unite people behind that idea without any sort of structure or spend money on advertising, and changes the game for us in terms of being able to talk about Advent and what it means, especially when we're up against commercial interests that spend billions trying to tell us what it means every year. And now with social media, we really have a voice to be able to do that as the church and as people of faith in a way that we never did before.
Oh, that's an amazing thing, the power that social media gives us. Take us through Occupy Advent and kind of the things that are taking place in it now. As you mentioned, you know, with Occupy Wall Street, the organization, such as it is very sort of horizontal. There's no sort of up and down. There's no, you know, you can't go and talk to the president of Occupy Wall Street or the president of, you know, Occupy Oakland or any of these individual movements or the movement as a whole. How is it all organized there online as far as Occupy Advent goes?
In a lot of ways, it's similar. I do run the Twitter account and the Facebook page and the blog for it. But what's been really exciting for me is less the information and the resources that I have put out there than it is the things that other people are doing. And so if you go on Twitter and you search for Occupy Advent, you'll find all sorts of resources that are being used in congregations, that are being put out there by other writers and other artists around the idea of Occupy Advent that I have had nothing to do with, and just been very excited to see that take off and other people do that. The logo that you had found that we did, the graphic artist did a series of posters, things like that around the idea, all sorts of ideas like that.
That's amazing. Well, and you know, you really can't say the word Occupy anymore without people thinking of Occupy Wall Street and the Occupy movement, and even thinking of encampments and, you know, even people, I guess, clashing with authorities and things like that. That kind of is at least one thing that people might think of when you say the word Occupy to them. Has that sort of connection come up, and has that been a good thing or a bad thing as far as Occupy Advent goes?
It's been a little bit of both. You know, I really think that as we talk about Advent, we can't help but talk about the Magnificat and the values of the proud being humbled and the lowly being lifted up, the hungry being fed, and the rich being sent away empty. And certainly there's some resonance there with the Occupy movement and what they have to say. We have been in conversation with protest chaplains who are on the ground in New York and D.C. and other places, and been prayer partners with them. And that's been important for us. But at the same time, recognizing that ultimately our service is to the coming Emmanuel and not to any political movement.
Well, you know, you have, I guess, at last check, about 1,100 Twitter followers to date. And do you think that maybe you have, through this Occupy Advent now, I guess, the Occupy Advent movement, I guess we can call it, do you think maybe you've sort of responded to a hunger that people might not even know that they had, to learn more about Advent, or to be able to share more about it, to have a place to go to share and to learn?
I think absolutely. I think this really did hit a need that people had, questions that people had, desires that people had. I've just been overwhelmed by the response to it and how deeply it's resonated with people. I think if I didn't do it, someone else would have, because the idea is in the air right now, as Occupy has just been in the news everywhere. But it really does seem to resonate and has spread farther and wider than I ever really thought that it would.
All right. Well, Reverend David Hanson, he is a pastor and, of course, the kind of the man behind the Occupy Advent. And we thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you taking some time to tell us what it's all about and explain it to us. And we will, of course, send our viewers to our blog, and we'll talk more about Occupy Advent there, and send them online. And of course, you know, that whole social media thing, I'm telling you, it is changing our lives, and it continues to every day. Reverend, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, and have a blessed Advent.
Appreciate it. You as well. Well, stay with us. There's more Currents ahead. When we return, you may think a Christmas story should begin in the New Testament, but this one starts in Genesis.
This is the time to think about the coming of the baby Jesus, you know? And so we have to try to look and do the things that Jesus did during his life.
Well, finally tonight, during this time of year, schools and churches typically hold Christmas pageants, which tell the story of Mary and Joseph traveling to Bethlehem and also the birth of Jesus. But this past weekend, St. Michael's Church in Flushing hosted a play that went back to the beginning, literally. La Grande Promesse tells the story of Christmas from the time of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden.
The purpose of the play is basically to show people that Christmas is not just packages and money and going to the store. It's about learning about why it's Christmas. It's Jesus Christ is being born, our Savior. And as a Christian community, that is one of our bases that we live by. It starts off with a small little story about a little girl and her grandmother, and it's the promise of life. It's Jesus Christ coming to save us. It's a great promise that Jesus Christ and God have for us in a story form without being, oh my God, you know, I'm scared of this story, and people really enjoying it.
But this is a play that is played for 51 years. The first time was played in my country, in Cuba. And after that, I was refugee in Spain, and I started putting it in different churches in different places. Most of the time, we do it as a benefit of the school, the church, you know, this is what I do.
This is a function of our church, our parish, to raise money, especially for many of the poor families that are hurting today because of the economy, and the donation was going out to the food pantry. One of the concerns that we have is that you know, our children are losing sight of understanding what Christmas is about, and I think this is an opportunity to be able to show them, you know, and in a form that they can understand.
It celebrates the power that an infant, a newborn, has to change things in this world and to give us hope.
We are in Advent, and this is the time to think about the coming of the Jesus, the baby Jesus, you know? And so we have to try to look and do the things that Jesus did during his life. And that is important to me because it's a time to meditate and think about everything.
Everybody has a wonderful attitude towards it, and they really deserve a lot of credit. None of them being professional, and none of them have ever acted before. So this is all new.
So I have two kids. And I think that if I teach my kids about the importance of, you know, the religion, especially in this time of Christmas, they're gonna build such a beautiful character in their life, and it's gonna help them a lot in their future. Because I've seen in my life, I was raised the same way, and all these values and principles that we acquire from the church help us to have a more stable life and to be and get along with other people.
Well, I hope there's a renewed sense of furthering that understanding and the gift that we have been given through the birth of Christ. And I think that's the message that we need to remember and to bring to the world.
I'm always a fan of entertainment for a good cause, and that was definitely falling into that category there. Of course, as you heard, the proceeds from that performance benefiting St. Michael's School and the parish's food pantry. So kudos. Well, that's it for this edition of Currents. Now, coming up tomorrow, it's an institution here in Brooklyn as one local family takes their Christmas decorating to a whole new level. You don't want to miss it. Until then, be sure and visit us online over at currentsny.net. You can also connect with us on Facebook, and you can follow us on Twitter. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Matt McClure. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great night.